In the US, over 70% of gasoline does not contain sufficient cleaning additives necessary to keep the engine in good condition. Because of this, more than 500,000 cars experience breakdowns every year due to excessive carbon buildup. That is why there are 6 fuel brands that are best avoided. Towards the end, I will talk about 3 brands that really help preserve engine life. My Toyota Land Cruiser 200 has driven 300,000 miles without any problems using this fuel. So, let's start the countdown. Number 6 is Safeway gasoline. Have you noticed that a couple of days after refueling, your car starts to run differently than usual? The idle becomes uneven, the gas pedal responds sluggishly, and sometimes even the check engine light comes on for no apparent reason. This behavior is often associated with the use of fuel made on the principle of cheaper, and whatever happens, at first glance, Safeway seems like a good option, but the savings here are deceptive. According to independent tests, the amount of cleaning additives in their gasoline is significantly lower than the level recommended by car manufacturers. As a result, the injectors and intake valves become clogged with deposits much faster than they should. When this process starts, the engine is no longer able to run smoothly. It starts to choke. I have disassembled more than one engine that was regularly refueled at Safeway. The picture is always the same: valves with a layer of dirt stuck to them, spark plugs covered in black soot, and the response to the gas pedal is as if the engine has to fight against internal debris. Many drivers are convinced that they are saving a few cents per gallon, but in the end, those pennies turn into subsequent repair costs. In addition, Safeway does not have top-tier status, which means that their fuel does not meet the higher detergent standards trusted by major automakers. And if you think that's rock bottom, the next brand makes Safeway look like elite fuel. Number 5 is 7-Eleven gasoline. At first glance, it seems that such a large chain should carefully monitor fuel quality, but the reality is quite different. 7-Eleven does not produce gasoline itself, it simply purchases it from local suppliers, offering the lowest price at the moment. This leads to chaos. One of their gas stations may sell perfectly acceptable gasoline, while another is literally a lottery with unpredictable results. This is really stressful for the engine because there's zero stability. I often had people come to me who were sure their car was running perfectly until they stopped at 7-Eleven. After refueling, they started experiencing idling issues, slow throttle response, and increased fuel consumption. Some even heard detonation during acceleration, a clear sign that the fuel was either of poor quality or contained water. And such cases are not uncommon. For years, there have been complaints about 7-Eleven fuel, where excess ethanol or sediment raised from old underground tanks was found. There have been situations where government inspectors have shut down entire stations because the fuel did not meet standards. When gasoline can disable injectors and fuel pumps, it is no longer an accidental mistake, but a blatant disregard for responsibility. A few cents in savings immediately turns into hundreds of dollars in repairs. And if you think that's going too far, the next brand has gone all in on fuel that barely meets the minimum acceptable standards. Number 4. Sam's Club. There is one common feature of gas stations operating at wholesale warehouses. Their main goal is to sell as much fuel as possible, not to ensure consistent quality. Sam's Club is a prime example of this approach. Their gasoline comes from different local suppliers, so the composition of additives and fuel quality vary from batch to batch. Today, you may get normal gasoline, and tomorrow, a mixture with so many impurities, we have to work at full capacity. More than once, cars have come to me after refueling at Sam's Club, clogged fuel filters, fluctuating RPMs, and in cold weather, starting problems. When we drained the gasoline for testing, it had a musty smell and a cloudy tint, a typical sign that water had gotten into the underground tanks or sediment had accumulated. And most importantly, Sam's Club does not have top-tier fuel status. This is an important point because such standards are designed precisely to prevent carbon deposits and keep engines clean. Their gasoline only meets minimum government standards and nothing more. Yes, their prices are lower, but there is a simple explanation for this. When a company sells huge volumes, the emphasis is on turnover speed rather than improving fuel composition. The irony is that the next brand manages to save even more on quality. Number 3. Circle K. This chain is tricky because it can be found literally at every turn. The bright red sign gives the impression of a large and reliable brand, but in reality, the situation is quite different. Circle K, like many others, does not produce its own fuel. They simply purchase gasoline from local suppliers who offer the lowest price at the moment. As a result, you are essentially filling your car with whatever fuel is available, and your engine becomes part of an experiment with yet another unknown mixture. I have come across engines more than once that, after several months of regular refueling at Circle K, were covered with a layer of carbon deposits. The injectors began to stick, the valves became encrusted with deposits, and misfires appeared and disappeared, as if the technology had a life of its own. When examining the cylinders through an endoscope, thick black deposits could be seen on the pistons, a typical result of weak or absent cleaning additives. In 2020, some Circle K stations in the south of the country were fined for selling gasoline contaminated with water, which caused damage to dozens of cars. Some drivers were unable to even make it home after filling up at these stations. The company explained the problem as a supply disruption, but that's a weak excuse for a chain that operates nationwide. And ahead is the next brand, associated with one of America's largest retail chains, where the fuel quality situation is even more serious. Number 2. Murphy USA. These gas stations are easy to spot. They are almost always located next to Walmart, which makes them very convenient. But convenience does not mean quality. Murphy USA's main strategy is simple: offer lower prices than its competitors. And when the main goal is to be as cheap as possible, you inevitably have to cut corners on something important, most often on the composition of detergent additives. I have noticed this more than once. Had to deal with the consequences of their fuel, fluctuating revs, acceleration dips, jerks under load, and even premature injector failure. Many drivers perceive this as natural aging of the car. But the problem is not with the car. It's just that the engine is trying to run on low-grade gasoline. Fuel tests from different states have shown that Murphy USA's cleaning additive levels often fall short of recommended standards, and the percentage of ethanol varies more than is allowed. Such instability disrupts fuel adjustments and leads to dirty, incomplete combustion of the mixture. In 2018, several Murphy stations in Texas and Louisiana were investigated after dozens of cars stalled on the way from the gas station. The fuel was contaminated. The company tried to blame it on supplier errors, but such excuses come up too often. Yes, their gasoline is cheaper, but the savings at the pump come at the expense of the engine. Every kilometer driven becomes a small payment for low quality. And that's not even the worst option. The next brand positions itself as premium fuel, although in reality it leaves the engine in a much worse condition. Number 1. Speedway. At first glance, this chain looks reliable. Bright signage, neat stations, a recognizable name, but appearances can be deceiving when it comes to the fuel you actually get. Speedway purchases gasoline from various local suppliers, so the composition varies from station to station. It's impossible to predict the quality. I have had to disassemble quite a few engines that had been fueled at Speedway for a long time, and they all showed the same pattern: a layer of carbon deposits on the valves, a cotton wool response from the gas pedal, and a noticeable drop in fuel economy. Fuel analyses often showed extremely low levels of cleaning additives. This is a serious problem. It is the cleaning components that prevent deposits from turning into thick sludge, which interferes with normal engine operation. But that's not the only downside. In 2020, some Speedway stations found themselves at the center of a scandal. After heavy rains, elevated water content was found in gasoline. Drivers would fill up, drive just a couple of kilometers, and their cars would start to stall or stop starting altogether. Water contamination causes corrosion of the fuel system and can disable the pumps. In addition, Speedway does not meet the top-tier standard. They only adhere to the minimum requirements, which speaks for itself. Outwardly, the brand looks attractive, but the contents of the pumps are a different story. If you have to use inexpensive gas stations, it is useful to know which additives can really compensate for poor fuel quality. This will help protect the injectors and fuel system. But there is a positive side. No all manufacturers behave this way. Some really care about the health of your engine. Let's take a look at 2 gasoline brands that really help protect your car. Number 2. Shell. Shell truly protects the engine rather than simply slowing down deposit buildup. Its nitrogen-enriched additives create a protective layer inside the engine that prevents carbon and dirt from sticking, essentially forming armor for the valves and injectors. Cars that run on Shell for years maintain clean combustion chambers and stable idling. The fuel quality is consistently high at every Shell station, thanks to strict top-tier standards. Yes, Shell costs more, but the difference is noticeable immediately. Quicker throttle response and smoother, more stable engine performance. And if this level of protection impresses you, the next brand takes engine care even further. It's one of the most reliable fuels in the country. Number 1. BP Amoco Ultimate. BP Amoco Ultimate rightfully leads the list. Its formula cleans the engine as you drive, and the strong detergent additives can remove even old carbon buildup. I've seen cars that ran on cheap fuel for years come back to life after just a couple of tanks of Ultimate smoother idling and restored throttle response. The fuel is top-tier certified and meets strict automaker standards. BP claims Ultimate keeps engines up to 60% cleaner compared to regular fuel without detergents, and my experience supports that. Yes, it costs more, but cleaner valves, better combustion, and smoother engine performance make it worth it. If you want to extend your engine's lifespan, this is the best fuel to put in your tank. You may already be using good fuel, but still believe the myths about how to use it. Many tips that even experienced drivers trust are actually gradually destroying the engine. Click below, and I will dispel the most common myths that cause even smart drivers to make the wrong decisions and risk their cars.